One for Mum, one for Dad, and one for the country.
And there has never been a more exciting time to be an Australian.
Budgets are about choices, Fran, and you show what you value through the choices you make.
Dead, buried, cremated.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. The Treasurer.
Australia's basically done for. We'll just end up being a third-rate economy. You know, a banana republic.
How good is Australia?
Just follow the money.
G'day and welcome to Follow the Money, the Australia Institute's podcast demystifying the big economic issues in Australia and putting them in plain English. I'm Ebony Bennett, Deputy Director at the Australia Institute, and today we're bringing you a conversation from our webinar series that we had with Independent Senator for Tasmania, Jacqui Lambie, about the importance of the crossbench. Senator Lambie was in conversation with Eloise Carr, Director of the Australia Institute's Tasmania branch. This was recorded live on Wednesday the 3rd of March, and things may have changed since recording.
I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Canberra, where I live and work, is Ngunnawal country, and pay my respects to elders past and present and to the traditional owners of this land. Sovereignty was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So today we're talking to Independent Senator for Tasmania, Jacqui Lambie, about the importance of the crossbench. Over the weekend, Senator Lambie was a guest at Cathy McGowan's Getting Elected conference, which featured hundreds of current and prospective independent candidates and organisers from across the country trying to get elected. Candidates who may in future sit on the crossbench with Senator Lambie, but the crossbench has become more and more prominent in recent years. Most of what's written about in politics and policies is about the activities and the policies of the government and opposition, the Liberal and Labor parties. But in recent years, it's often the crossbench that determines the outcome of major legislation, whether it's things like company tax cuts or the crossbench pursues reforms that the government isn't necessarily very interested in, like the need for a federal ICAC with teeth, something that Senator Lambie has spoken a lot about. And so that's why we wanted to talk to a prominent member of the crossbench today. Senator Lambie was raised in public housing in Devonport. She served 10 years in the Australian Army before being forced out by an injury. And she was elected as a senator for Tasmania at the 2013 federal election, at which time she was representing the Palmer United Party. But since then, she resigned from that party to sit as an independent in the Senate. She formed her own political party, the Jacqui Lambie Network, of which she's the leader, and she was re-elected to the Senate in 2016. However, on the 14th of November 2017, she resigned from the Senate after it was confirmed that she was a dual national, part of a number of MPs and senators caught up in that at the time. And she's obviously a mother of two boys and joining us from Tasmania today. Thank you so much for joining us, Senator Lambie. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on.
May I call you Jacqui?
Please do so. Yes, otherwise I'll find that title insulting. We'll just get on with Jacqui.
Well, it's been a political career that's been anything but predictable. We're also joined today by Eloise Carr. She's the Director of the Australia Institute in Tasmania. Jacqui, just to start, I want to come to the topic at hand. In your experience, you've been sitting on the crossbench for many years now. Why do you think the crossbench is important?
I think the crossbench is important because it keeps the rest of them accountable and it keeps them at bay. You know, they've got to answer questions. If you've got power, if the blue or red's got power all through both sides of Parliament, then we're going to have a problem in this country and nothing's debated. It's just pushed through, and that cannot. There's no way that could actually be good for the country.
Yeah. And so you have been on the crossbench for quite a while now. Before we, I guess, get into a bunch of other issues, obviously there's a lot happening in Parliament at the moment. We've got allegations of rape against a sitting cabinet minister. We've got other rape allegations from the staff of Brittany Higgins in Parliament House. A lot of talk about the culture of Parliament House and how politics is toxic to women. What's your observations of what's happening up in Parliament at the moment, how the Prime Minister's handling this and what the culture is like for women?
First of all, I don't think the Prime Minister's handling this very well at all. I'll say this, and I've said it in the past, and I'll continue to say it. His emotional intelligence never ceases to surprise me because he has very little of it. I think that comes with life experience, and you've actually got to be born and bred with that emotional intelligence, unfortunately. And for some people, especially at that sort of level, a lot of them do not have it. That's the first problem. So it's easy to do sit in there in denial rather than turn around and say, I'm going to deal with this and I'm going to deal with this right away today and I'm not putting up with any crap. So he just doesn't have that in him. I'm sorry, he just doesn't. This is not going to go away. I think this is going to become bigger. I think you're going to see more people, especially more women, stand up about the culture in Parliament. For me, I don't see a lot of it. I don't go to Manuka and sit at the bars with the red or the blue team or anything like that. If anything, I might do a quick dinner with either a minister or a shadow minister or something every now and then, but that's about as far as it goes. So being so busy and having very limited staff and no backbenchers out there, I really don't have a lot of time for that partying, the mingling and things like that, and let alone seeing the culture that's happening behind the closed doors. Look, there's no doubt. I'm not, I'm certainly very aware. I'm former military. They have the same bloody culture going in there. It's just as bad, if not worse. It seems to happen a lot worse in these institutions, and they seem to be able to cover it up a lot better in these institutions than what they can anywhere else around Australia's workforce. So it is very, very concerning. But for me, and I guess my being ex-military, I don't really have those men up there taking me on, to be honest. They're probably a lot more intimidated of Jacqui Lambie than probably most others up there, myself and Penny Wong, and probably Tanya Plevesek. So, so I think because we can stand our own, we probably don't see it. I certainly don't. I don't apologise for that. I'm just, I've got my head down. I'm trying to get as much done as I possibly can. There is a lot of legislation to get through, that sort of thing. In the same meantime, I don't take those bloody political donations, so I have to stay out there, on the streets and do what I've got to do because. So really, I don't have time. Hence, that's probably why I haven't had a partner in my life since I've been in politics. I hardly get to see my children, which moan about it. For me, but I mean, I'm certainly very aware that sort of thing goes on because, like I said, I was a former military.
Yeah, and there's a number of reviews and things being raised as a possibility to look into the culture, separate, I think, from some of the more recent allegations.
No, actually,
can you tell us about that? Yeah,
I can.
What's happening?
Well, what they're doing is you'll see them watered down and phased out, those reviews, is how I understand it after talking to Minister Birmingham last week. And what you'll have is one big independent review. Now, that myself and some of the other, especially the female independents, have been asked to come in, whether it's Saley, Rebecca, Sharkey, or Helen Haynes herself, and give some names of people that should be in charge of this independent inquiry. So you should see the other 3 or 4 that they've got running, or was it 5? That should evaporate over the next week or 2 and get something truly apparently. One was just to look at what was going on in the Liberal Party, and then there was another one. So there was not one actually looking at the whole issue here. So hopefully that you'll see a lot more action on that in the next sitting week when we're up there next week. And I would expect those people that are going to run that independent review and be independent, like we've been promised, expect those to be named and get started on that review in the next 10 to 12 days. And even then, I'm giving them a little bit more leniency than what I should, because quite frankly, I would have liked it to be started and those names out at the end of this week. So I'll give them till the end of next week and see how we go before we go back into Parliament that week after.
Eloise, did you have a question?
Oh, Jacqui, I just wanted to hear a bit more about the National Convention for the Independence that happened over the weekend, and were you presenting there, and what did you talk about and what did you take away from it?
For me, look, I didn't get to sit in the whole lot because I also had to go out there with my boots on. There were some events. I've been sort of shut out from those events because of COVID, unfortunately. So I watched the segment. I think it had Beck, Sharkey, and I think it was the 3 independents or the 2, maybe her and Helen. I watched that for a little while and then got stuck into my own. I think what you can see is it depends on your electorate or your state on how you're going to run a campaign as an independent. Everyone's done it differently. Certainly they haven't done the way that I ran my campaign, and every campaign that I've ran the last 3, whether it was with Palmer United at going through a double D or been out there for 20 months without a job, without cash, trying to win my seat back after being done under Section 44. So I think if there's anything I take out of it, you have to move with the times. You have to work out, how's the best way that you can connect with your electorate or your state. And preferably, if you're not taking political donations, so you look even better and keep yourself clean cut, that certainly helps.
Eloise, you've been doing a bit of work on, I think, cleaning up the culture of accountability and the accountability mechanisms in Tasmania. Jacqui, do you have any thoughts on that process that's happening in your state?
The process? Oh, I thought it'd gone into a coma. Is it actually season moving again, is it? Oh, my God. We've been pushing this. I've been pushing this since I've been up here. If you've got nothing to hide, why can't you show your political donations in 7 days? Why can't you bring it down to, if there's anything over $1,500 or $3,000, you've got to declare it. If you really got nothing to hide, then what is the problem in having political donations change? You can't tell me that you go to a dinner and you pay 10 grand a seat to eat your soggy fish and chips there is worth 10 grand. What are you buying? Come on. It blows me away that these so-called leaders in our country, their ignorance on how the public actually feel about this and all this being exposed. I tell you what it would do is to keep them on the straight and narrow a little bit more, because there's nothing worse than seeing legislation come through the parliament and you go, it makes no common sense. Why would you vote for that? And then you're going through and you're connecting the dots with political donations from the past into the party itself, and you think, yeah, this is not what's best for the nation. This is what's best for a very small group of people so you can continue to get your donations every time there's an election. This is killing the country, and I'll be honest with you, it's probably one of the worst things going on out there right now is these political donations. And I think if people could see what I could see, what was going on up there in that house and what goes on in state parliament here, what those political donations buy, and I'll tell you now, those politicians can be bought as cheap as chips. Really, for access, just offer them $1,000. They'll just about get you in the front door. Then give them another couple and you probably get what you want. That's another frightening thing about it. You don't have to pay much to get what you want. I mean, for God's sakes, at least if you're going to give something to somebody, make sure you charge them an arm and a leg. Christ. It's really frightening.
Yeah. Eloise, did you...
I was just going to ask Jacqui how involved you get in state politics, because obviously this is an issue across state and federal. And Tasmania is in a process of reviewing our electoral act at the moment, including political donations and what the threshold should be and so on. So, just interested to hear how engaged you get in state issues.
No, I have to stay up with the state issues, but I can tell you now between Tasmania and the federal parliament, their political donations are the weakest in the country. So really, quite frankly, I would have thought Gutwin would be a little bit bigger than that, and I would have expected a bit more out of him. It's been really pathetic. I think we made a submission into that. We certainly ran our own political donations inquiry up there in Canberra as well, giving them options, not just saying something needs to be done. We told them how it could be done, certainly putting our bit out there. Look, for us in state politics, it is really difficult because of this. So I either compromise my family's name and take that and the country, or I don't, and that means trying to get other people up, whether it's state or federal, makes it really, really difficult. And that's the problem that we're having, because it's not just if you're going to run, you can't. You've got to get out there. You've got to be out there. So I mean, basically, you have to chuck your job away, especially that last 6 months. You have to be out there at least 18 months beforehand, because we don't have that, or 12 months minimum. So it is really, really difficult to get. And there's a lot of people out there that just say, what the crap, they've got no respect for politicians. What the stuff would I go into the political arena? That's what we're getting to. So the pool itself, the political pool itself is actually getting smaller of the people that actually want to put their hand up and have a run. So that really, really bothers me that, the intellectual political pool itself, is getting smaller and smaller and less. So
Jacqui,
I'm not sure
what
what
to
to
ask you about that. So I think when you first came to Parliament, to be frank, journalists talk a lot about wanting regular people in politics, people who don't come as from a background and a long history associated with a political party, people that talk like regular people. But when you first got to Parliament, you didn't sound like any other politicians, and sometimes I think some of the journalists who spoke with you were a bit snobby and made a lot out of the fact that you didn't keep to political talking points and, you didn't talk like a regular politician. How important is it to you that there are other people like you who will put their hand up and run and don't face those kinds of barriers to getting into politics?
I think for me, I didn't help myself, and I probably didn't have those people. I didn't have the right people around me. That did not help. So I have to take blame in that. If I've learnt the hard way or done it the hard way, I've certainly done that. And I can certainly mentor people through that so they don't end up in the same situation that I did. And I don't think because I was put under Clive Palmer and ran with his party, that did not help the situation as much as he tried to shield us. It actually made the situation worse.
Mm-hmm.
Not having a go at Clive Palmer at all, because he did try and shield us, but every move he made just made it worse. So it was really quite difficult. I come from a background where I didn't give a stuff about politics. I just knew that I needed to be on the inside to make a difference to veterans and to the state of Tasmania. I had no difference between the upper house and the lower house. No idea whatsoever. I really didn't. I had no idea what a Reb was. Absolutely none. I would make sure that, people coming in, that they had some sort of I never thought about that. I just thought, well, if I'll just work it out as I'm going along, right?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't suggest anybody do that. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that before. And I'm not educated either because I joined the army at just over 17, nearly 18. So, for me, what I would do is make sure that those people that were coming in maybe had just a little bit more political nous than what I did. Mind you, I had none, so I'm not asking for a lot. And that I guide you so you're not stuck in there, so you're not, so you're not sitting in front of a camera and you have no idea yourself. For me, because I'd been out of work for 12 years, I was still working on my self-esteem and stuff like that, so I really had a lot going against me, even to the point after leaving Palmer United in November of 2014, I sat down with my dad in February and just cried and said, I don't have what it takes. I've been out of the workforce for too long.
Yeah.
Because my father goes, Lambies don't give anything up. We don't give up. We don't stand down. Otherwise I reckon I would have chucked in. It was difficult for me, but I would be very, very different than pretty much anyone else that's been in there, just because of my background, what I went through, and that I was still coming out of that Veterans Affairs thing, fighting with them for so long. So,
yeah.
But just making sure they're a bit more cushioned and they're a bit more better mentored, I guess. So I would really like normal people out there to have a shot, but really I'm telling you now, we're happy to back people and stuff like that, but they have to be prepared to give back as well, and that could mean taking 6 months out of your job because it's the only way you're going to get elected, and that is a lot to ask anyone. It's bloody tough ask. So we're a little bit stuck in the middle. It's like, God, if we take political donations, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But really, I don't have permission. We're using my family's name to do that, nor do I have the permission of Tasmania when I come out to start with, said I won't be taking those donations. We rely heavily on the public, very heavily on the public to give their $5, $10, $15, $20 notes, things like that, and chuck them in their bank account. We have regular people now putting in $50 a month, stuff like that. Most of it comes from the mainland, I'll be honest with you. Tasmanians don't have a lot of money. We have a lot of elderly down here, and I feel shameful for even asking them. For me, it was very sweet when I was running around, had no money for the 20 months, me and Dad, and a borrowed van with Jacqui Lambie all over it, that had little old ladies come out and giving me their $5 saying, go and get yourself a coffee, love. Or people just saying, here's $40, go and put some petrol in your car. Or people that would ring me up and say, hey, if you want to stay here at the hotel, we won't charge you anything, come stay for the night we're going through, So it was a real community thing that way, and that paid off for me and kept our costs down, because it was really, really difficult. I think I had like $80 left in my bank on the last day before running into that election. So
yeah, wow.
And about 2 months worth of house payments left to cover me. So it's like I'm prepared to give, and I was prepared to give my first house up to have a run before I ran out of money and went with Clive Palmer. So if other people want to have a run, you have to sacrifice somewhere. I can't just go out there and do it all for you. So that means you are going to have to give up your job or or go on long service leave, but you're going to work every weekend going into that for the next, 8 to 10 months or whatever it is. So
yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot to ask, especially if you've got kids, you're younger, you've got a partner. Basically, you have to put your life on hold, and there's no guarantee that you'll get a seat at the end. And so it's a lot to bloody ask.
Jacqui, you talked there about how much you had to learn on the job as you went, and since joining the crossbench in 2015, you really have played a key role in determining a lot of legislation, sometimes quite controversially. So, right at the beginning, you were part of the crossbench that saved a lot of the clean energy architecture from Tony Abbott's acts, helping to create, I think, about $23 billion worth of renewable energy projects after that. And you've also supported things like the income tax cuts package that the Australia Institute has been quite critical of. And of course, things like repealing Medivac, for which you drew quite a lot of criticism. How do you approach those really big and controversial issues when you are likely to be in the balance of power and perhaps the final determining vote? And when you do cop criticism, how important is it to be able to explain how you approached it or why you voted the way that you did?
I think you've just got to, because I had no political influence sort of around me, we look at all the evidence and we put all the evidence on the table and we look at it and we sift through it and we speak to the fors, against and anything in between. That's what we do. And we try and come up with the best solution or the best way around that is best for everyone. So there's no loser out of it all. And I guess that's the way we do it. I was very lucky. I didn't have a balance of power when Nick Xenophon was up there. For a short period of time, certainly up until a double D. I was a part of that, Palmer United and Ricky Muir, the motorists, when we still held that balance of power. But even then, I'm not sure I did a great job of it because I was just trying to find my feet, let alone understanding what all that was about. And then, of course, Nick Xenophon, after that double D, he had the balance of power, but Nick had taken me under his wing right from the start. So basically I could walk alongside Nick during that period of time until I got done under Section 44 and watch how he was doing things. He'd explained to me how he was doing things. So I'm really, really grateful to have had that mentoring from Nick Xenophon. That's helped me greatly. It comes down to making sure you have the right people around you, like I've said before, and making sure you're hiring the right people, and that is a mixture of everything. That's a mixture of age, a mixture of the left, the right, and in between, and making sure you have them around you so you can hear all their points of view, whether they're educated or uneducated, and I try and do that in my staffing as well. So for me, we do cop a lot of criticism, which is fine. They can criticise me, but what they're actually doing is they're criticising my staff. And there are times where I've really gone ballistic over that. It's not nice. If you want to criticise, then do it. But calling them the C word on the phone and stuff like that, and I'll be honest with you, it's actually the left that is worse than the right. How about that? It is the left worse than the right with that sort of stuff. I find it absolutely shameful. But the pressure it puts on my staff, if you want to go at me on the streets, and you be my guest if you think you're big enough, or you want to ring me and call me every name under the sun, but it's my staff that pay the price for that. And that I find quite upsetting. So, we don't always get it right. We try and do the best job that we possibly can. We've got limited resources. And like I said, I don't have a life. This is my life. I'm throwing everything I've got at it. So if people still want to criticise me, that's fine, but at least do it to my face or ring me up and do it over the phone or do it in an email. But don't do it to the staff. That's the thing that really annoys me more than anything.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Eloise, did you have another question for Jacqui?
Yeah, Jacqui, the independent review of the EPBC Act recommended a range of reforms to make national environmental law more effective. And you played a key role with other crossbenchers to stop the government from rushing through changes late last year. And what do you see as the critical components of any reform to the EPBC Act?
Yeah, so, talking about crossbench, between myself, Sterling, Griff and Rex, look, what we try, like I said, we try and negotiate. We try and do the right thing. We try and do what's right to keep the bills alive, so everyone's happy with it. We have been working alongside the minister, but we've basically, she received a letter from us, and I certainly won't be putting that out at this point in time, and that was after speaking to her in that last couple of days, the last sitting period. And we've told her that unless they put in strong environmental standards, which we wrote about, an independent commissioner, then we wrote about to make sure that those environmental standards are enforced properly with that independent commissioner, not a mate, an independent commissioner. Right, then it's probably it's not going to go. The discussions aren't going to go any further. obviously the Standards and Insurance Bill has now gone to an inquiry and is due to report June 15th. So we've been able to push that out and make sure that we have a look at those standards again and separate that out, just so we can see a bit more about the standards and hear about them. So I guess that for us, it's just putting all the checks and balances in. So like I said, well, it's the standards that bother us. It's the standards. It's what I'm not even happy with the way Tasmanian standards are down here. And by passing them more power, I'm not happy about that either.
Mm.
So I just feel like they're palming this stuff off to the states. Do they have the money? Do they have the people on the ground to be able to do this? How much backing? What are they paying for? So I still think there's quite a lot of answers that need to be given here. And I think you'll find that I think it's going to be an all or nothing with the Liberal Party sitting at Cabinet. And unfortunately, when it comes to Susan Ley, I don't think she's got the strength to take those men on. So I would imagine this is probably going to go wayside, which is really unfortunate because we could actually probably make our environmental standards even stronger and better. But this will come down to Susan Ley, and we're working really hard. And especially my senior advisors and Rexes and Sterlings, we're giving a lot of time in there to try and make some of this bill happen, the best parts of it. So, you see what I mean? But it comes down to then the minister getting all those cabinet, getting those white-collared men on side, instead of saying, you will do it, I'm getting the whip out, and this is the way it's going to be. Unfortunately, those women in the Liberal Party just don't have that.
Mm.
So as much as, I don't have a problem with them personally, but their strength against those men, I don't know what it is. But, yeah, I just don't know where this is going to end up shortly, but it's going to come down to Mr. Ley on whether or not she can pull this off and whether or not she can convince her cabinet to lax it off a bit and let her control the situation. And I'm just not feeling the goodness of that she's going to be able to achieve that.
Mm. So we'll go to questions from the audience in just a second, but I would just like to give a shout out. We've got about 630 people on this webinar, so thank you so much for joining us today, and I can see a lot of great questions here that we'll get to shortly. But Jacqui, you've been an independent senator for Tasmania for quite a few years now. I just wondered if you could reflect for us on what you think some of the key things that you've achieved for Tasmania or some of the important issues ahead for your state that you're thinking about.
Yeah, so we have a big, at the moment we have West Coast Renewables coming, trying to set up down here. They've already done Granville Harbour, done a great job down there, 58, 58 wind farms down there already. And right now they've got a signing deal, pretty much backers all over, ready to go for I think 432 to go up through sort of like this side of the middle of Tasmania and come up. There's no problems with that. None of the locals are making a hoo-ha out of it. They're glad to do it. But what it would give us is 3,000 direct and indirect jobs on the northwest coast. Better get the TAFE with its doors open again, which would be lovely. I mean, it's got its doors open, but you wouldn't think so, as you people would probably know.
But TAFE have been doing it really tough, haven't they?
Oh, mate. They've destroyed them anyway, and they we can talk about that in another session. But and hydrogen off that, only invested, and the only person holding it up is the Mineral Council of Tasmania and the Premier of Tasmania. So it's funny that Robbins Island out there, that's sitting on an island that has these species that they're concerned about, building this great big bridge across to reach it, the destruction that's going to do to the environment, being ticked off like it's not an issue whatsoever. And everyone's carrying on about it. Yet this one that everybody wants down here, that's much bigger, much better, already backed, not asking for federal government money or state government money, we can't get it ticked off. So anyway, that's just one of my, that's the bee in my bonnet right now about that. Right. So, but I think the biggest achievement, obviously, for me is having that public housing debt wiped.
Yeah.
Well, it should be. There is problems with that, though, and even with me getting that public housing debt, the reason it took me a little longer than what people say, what's the problem? Why is it taking 12 weeks? Is because I had to do like a legal document to say whether it's Liberal Labor in Tasmania, you must keep the same amount of funding, if not more, and if it's the same amount of funding, it must go up with the increases. standard increases each year as well, so that keeps ticking over, right? So that was an agreement we had to make, so there's a bit of argy-bargy about that, at least keeping up the CPI, that you must keep that amount of money that you're using now in there and keep that going. The problem is that we're having is Tasmania right now is in a boom, right? We cannot get tradies. You're waiting months for tradies, so those tradies, which good on them, because for a long time there, up until the last 4 or 5 years, they were doing it really tough down here in Tassie, especially the young guys out there trying to get apprentices and stuff like that. That's actually put the public housing bill behind, because there's jobs moving a lot faster and things getting ticked off in people's private residence and all the rest, and that's paying better. So they're doing that. So it has put it in a bit of a hold. I'm not sure that the housing minister is doing everything he possibly can. I'm not sure he's the right bloke for the job, to be honest with you, when it comes to Yench. But I certainly know there is non-for-profits out there doing everything they possibly can. We've got a good table of those NGOs out there, and we have done in Tasmania now for about 4 or 5 years, and they work together and they do that very, very well. So I think they're actually driving it, but unfortunately they don't get the money to spend. They've got to wait for the minister, and this is holding them back. This is really holding them back. So I'm just not sure whether the minister's heart isn't in it, or he's just not capable of doing the job. But, you know, I am really concerned. Rent has gone up. We're going to end up with more homeless people out there. And in the meantime, we've got mainlanders down here. They're smashing us, blowing up our properties, and they're going through the roof.
Yeah.
So, you know, that in itself is a problem. I think a lot of the deals you get done, you actually don't have to do deals, because I've got such a big voice and big social media. I just go out there and smash either the state ministers that are in charge. It's not a lot of them. That's only a little bit on that side, but it's hitting those people up here and then hitting the Liberal senators down here and the House of Representatives, because as you know, in Braddon, Bass and Lyons, it's only about a 2% difference, give or take, swing. And therefore that's like a revolving door, who gets that position, whether it's red or blue. So by smashing them and putting the pressure on them, we'll usually get the result anyway without having to do a deal, which suits me because I hate selling my soul. So, it was like the tax cuts, the reason we got that public housing debt, and I'd like to see everybody else's removed and have that same sort of deal I did with the state of Tasmania, make sure that same money stays in there with the CPI attached and other bits and pieces, and it's got to be used in these areas, nowhere else within that housing portfolio and stuff like that be done. I think that helps, and it also generates jobs out there. And I noticed that some of your people are going, yes, but you gave them those third lot of tax cuts. I remind those people that we've just gone through COVID, and like I said on the floor when I gave my speech, that happens in 2020, 24, 25. We're going to have 2 more elections between now and then. It doesn't mean that they can't be removed from the table. And by the way, Labor was already going to vote for that. So I thought, well, if Labor wants to vote for that and not do a deal for itself, then I'll undercut them and go and do the deal for Tasmania. So I was damned if I do, damned if I don't. But in the meantime, I got that housing debt wiped. So that would have went through those tax cuts. I'm telling you now, they already had Labor support. So I just got in a little bit earlier.
Thanks, Jacqui. We'll go now to questions from the audience. We might just deal with, there's several Medivac questions here to begin with. So I've got one from Ingrid Jackson, another from Trevor Gold. Ingrid is asking, can you just explain why you voted to repeal Medivac? And Trevor is asking about the deal associated with that, and if you can shed any more light on that.
Yeah, I can. So I've told the government that I wouldn't repeal the Medivac, as you've all seen, without putting something in instead, and they agreed to that. Right, so they have agreed to that. They agreed to that, what was it, November, not last year, year before. But part of that agreement is that if I tell you what that agreement is, then the deal's off, or the agreement's off. You can call it whatever it is. And those refugees will be left with absolutely nothing. We're not going anywhere. They're going to stay there. That's where it is. Or you can have them brought back in. They're being put in detention centres anyway. That was a choice that I was left with. So I'm hoping that that this will be explained very, very shortly on what that agreement was and what has come out of that agreement. And it's making it very, very difficult. I wanted to say something before Christmas time. And I said that to put the deal on, to put the pressure on the government to make sure that agreement that we had was completely followed through and to get moving with it and finish it off. So that's where we're at. I mean, I can come out here and spurt that, and then, what it's going to do is leave them worse off. So if you just want to give me a little bit more time, that would be great. And then everyone will be happy, and they'll get what they want. That's what's going to come out of this agreement.
Thanks, Jacqui. The next question is from Lee Norton, and it's a follow-on from the EPBC question before and about that review process. And it's asking especially about, are there any draft standards, including the failure to protect Aboriginal heritage? Is there anything specific about protecting Aboriginal heritage?
Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I'll have to go back through those standards about that Aboriginal heritage. I think it's pretty much the standards that come out of it's the standards we're looking at that come out of what's his name? Sorry, I got a blank. He's a gentleman that wrote it up.
The Graham Samuel review?
Yeah, sorry, Samuels. Yeah, so it's pretty much just going along with his standards. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is from George Votsarakis. I hope I've said that correctly, George. My apologies. When will the federal ICAC become reality? I know this is one that you care a lot about, Jacqui.
Well, apparently they're very well behaved up there, so they don't need one. When are they putting police on the beat? Jesus. You have to ask. I don't know. As soon as we get more power as independents, I think, unfortunately One Nation holds a couple of those seats, and it's a pity they weren't pushing it a lot harder. And Labor's even their ICAC, you don't hear them pushing it a lot because theirs is quite weak as well. I just don't, I think the Greens, they're really, they're pretty much on the ball with this all the time, and because you've got, you've got some people down the lower house, so I think there's about 5 or 6 of us as independents and pushing it, but we still just do not have enough power that going. I would think that, I don't know what the problem is. If you have nothing to hide, why wouldn't you set one of these things up with the biggest lot of powers that they can possibly have, that nothing's off the table? And, by allowing that ICAC to make sure that if there are criminal charges that they are charged as well, have another cell from the outside specifically attached to that. But, I mean, I can sort of give and take with that if they want to pass it out to the feds or whatever once they find criminal activity. But I just don't see what the problem is. I think it would bring a lot more transparency into the public arena, and it would also keep them more on the straight and narrow. It really, really would. Right now, they can get away with anything. They're just about getting away with murder, to be honest with you, and it frightens me where we're going. Even leaders need discipline, unfortunately, and that's life. That's what it's about. And without that ICAC, we're not getting that. And until we get that, you won't see any changes going to be made, I don't think, in federal government.
The next question is from Tracy Davis. She says, Jacqui, your vote and all crossbenchers is vital to defeat the IR bill that will hurt all workers. Where are things up to with that IR bill, and where are you leaning on that?
Yeah, so we're still waiting to see whether anything's going to be removed from that. Obviously, you had the boot got the boot, which was a good start. But there is some good stuff in that bill. That's the problem. I mean, you have we need to come up with a wording for casualisation. There's no doubt about that. We can't keep going on, from after that the federal court thing that's just happened. We need to be able to fix that. We need to make sure that employers aren't ripping off employees. So there are a couple of things in that bill that really need to be dealt with that could actually make workers' lives out there even better. So we're trying to just keep that alive. Certainly the between Sterling Griff and myself and Rex, just trying to keep that alive. And my advisors have been speaking, have touched base with the Attorney Generals, but it's like the Attorney General's given up. So it's not like if he's not going to get the whole bill, then don't worry about doing it at all. So that's what I'm up against. Well, that's what we're up against. And I don't know where One Nation is, because one minute they're supporting it and then they're not, and then they are, and then they're probably not when they take the vote. And when they take the vote, they probably will. So I just think if Porter, the Attorney General, is going to take this all or nothing approach, then he's going to end up with nothing. But there are things that need to be fixed. And certainly I do not want to see, after that decision in the courts, your small business having to pay back years and years and years because people are going from casual to permanent. You know, I don't want that standard and that sitting there. Something needs to be done. And what small business out there is already doing it tough. So that's a real problem in itself. So employees getting ripped off, you know, having much bigger penalties put up against the employers. And that sort of stuff should be happening to make sure it's a deterrent. So there is, you know, some parts of this bill that really need to be spoken about, left on the table and dealt with, unfortunately.
Thank you. The next question is from Angela Hill. She says, "Hi, Jacqui. How would you encourage young people to enter politics without joining the Labor or Liberal parties? Would you encourage them?"
Yeah, no, not particularly. It's a little bit, unless you're really hardcore and you want to go and fight for your country, I wouldn't join the military at this point in time either. It's got issues. So, look, you can't, if one of my kids wanted to come into politics, I certainly wouldn't stop them. I'd do everything I can to support them and mentor them, as much as I'll be riding my eyes back saying, can't you find something else to do? If they really want to do that, I understand the young kids' ways. If that's where their heart is and that's the goal that they want to achieve in their life, and that is their silver lining, then, geez, I'll get out there and do everything I can to possibly encourage them and help them. It is quite difficult. I do believe they've got Labor's, is it Emily's List, that they do in Victoria? I think I haven't spoken about it for a long time. I think that's a really good initiative. For young women, that seems to be
that's
working
particularly
quite
to help
well.
women into politics. Yep.
Yeah, it has. And I think that's really great. Unfortunately, I've only got limited numbers of people and volunteers, and trying to run something like that makes it really difficult as well. I wouldn't encourage anyone under 30 years of age or 28 to actually come into politics until they've grown up a little bit and got a little bit of a life experience on their hands. I don't know. I think it was the first or second year I was up in Parliament. I think it was White or something, 22 years of age and being a minister. Right, thank you. I nearly blew over. I thought, are you kidding me? This boy's got no experience, no nothing. And he's, you can use too much of your power being a bigger person too and being an adult on those younger people, like really, and I think that bothers me as well, especially, younger people expect mentoring and stuff like that, and people can take advantage of that for their own reasoning.
Yeah. Jacqui, you've talked a little bit about how difficult it is as one person with your own political party and the resources, that you don't have. So the next question is from John Baker. So he says, what resources do you and other independents on the crossbench have to respond to issues and policies and to develop your own policies? And so he said here, for example, staff, research by think tanks like the Australia Institute, sharing with other like-minded independents. Could you just talk to us a little bit about how the crossbench deals with that kind of not having a whole political party to back you when you're on the smaller end of politics?
Yes, so I have one of my senior advisors from Grattan and the other one's from the Institute. I love watching the debate between the two of them. Very interesting. I do lie. The good thing is with me, I can't really speak for the rest of them, but because I have been in the game now since 2013, I've learned who to trust, who to take word from, that they're telling me the truth and they're doing it for the right reasons, not because it suits the little who they're lobbying for or anything else, but it is right. And so you can narrow that down slightly. You've still got to see all the different groups out there and stay on the ground and things like that. But I've started, you can know who to trust and who you can go to. I do use the Australian Institute. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but I do. I've always had a good relationship with Ben Oaquist. I've been very grateful for his help over the years. So grateful.
Can I ask how much you talk to other members of the crossbench and what kind of relationship all the crossbenchers have in Parliament?
Yeah, so for the Senate, like Sterling Griffiths and Rex Senator Patrick's, They usually meet on a Monday, so that my legislation advisors speak to theirs. So we've been able to get that up and running. It took that first 6 or 8 months while we all got settled back in, but that's sort of running now, so that helps. Being able to discuss that between a lot of us. We struggle to discuss with One Nation. So we just find it's probably easy just to leave them out and we just do the 3 of us. Because it can get really difficult, can waste a lot of energy, and we just don't have much to waste, unfortunately. So that makes things easy. Like I said, I have that relationship with those 3 men as well, and we can usually come to some sort of compromise most of the time, which is good. And I think, we're not there, I think, because the 3 of us, if we lose our seats, we get on with it. That's the way it is. So there's nothing else at stake. It's all about putting the country first and what's best for it, and I hope to Christ that between the 3 of us we can come to some sort of decision that is going to actually achieve that. That's what we do.
And I will say, on behalf of the Institute, we're always delighted when Jacqui uses our work, and it's always open and publicly available for anyone, up to and including the Prime Minister, to make great use of the Australia Institute's research. And we really appreciate the support you've shown the Institute over the years.
I think they've got their own think tank, the far right think tank.
Yeah, they've got a few, actually. The next question...
I don't know if I'd call them a think tank, but whatever.
The next question that I've got here touches again on the historic rape allegations, and I believe the Minister in question is perhaps going to give a statement sometime this afternoon. But I'm not sure how much more you want to say on this, Jacqui, but the question is from Brian McIver, who asks, what kind of role do you see for yourself on the crossbench, if any, on pressuring the Cabinet Minister to stand down in the wake of these historic rape allegations?
I actually find this quite absurd. No doubt that they'll come out in denial, because that's exactly what they do all the time. I believe if there is something hanging over a minister's head and it's going to hurt their party and hurt the country, then they should have enough conscience to step down and sit at least on the backbench. But unfortunately, we don't see that. Leading by example happen very often, if at all. As a matter of fact, the only person I've seen do that is Sam Dastyari. It's a difficult one. I'm always one to, put all the evidence on the table until proven guilty. I do believe in our Australian legal system. But then on the other hand, you've got the Defence Minister out there, you've got alleged war crimes going on, and some of those blokes have been sacked even before they've been found guilty. So it's like the Liberal Party wants its cake and wants to eat it as well. So, it's really, really bad leadership, and at least at the very minimum should go to the backbench until this is all sorted, I think.
Thank you. The next question is from Fred Sim. He's curious to know what your thoughts are on the federal government's response to the Aged Care Royal Commission report so far, especially given you've mentioned that your constituents in Tasmania, there's a lot of elderly people and most of them not wealthy.
Oh, I just don't think the Prime Minister has any shame, to be honest with you. Honestly, I call it karma, but he probably have more than enough money to be in one of those aged care centres. But, when you've looked at 20 reviews or 20 inquiries in the last 20 years, and we've all known this, and Labor's no better. They did very little when they were in power. So, I find it absurd that Albanese can come out there and start smashing them when, honestly, Labor didn't do a lot themselves. They're both to blame. Everyone's to blame for what is going on in aged care, and it needs to be fixed. Those recommendations need to be put in as quickly as possible, and there should be no excuses for not doing that. It blows me away how they can say that they'll have all these care packages out there for the people in their own homes out there when we don't even have the workforce to back it up. So what is wrong with, once again, TAFEs, we need students. Once again, what is wrong with saying, hey, if you go and do your aged care, you go and do your Cert 3 or Cert 4 in aged care, we'll give it to you for nothing. And by the way, we're going to give you a pay rise as well because you deserve one. It's just like our cleaners out there cleaning the toilet. They're the worst paid in the country. And I just think it just disgusts me that they're nearly below the minimum wage. They're just sitting right on top of it. Encourage people to go into that sector so we've got more people to do the job. We still cannot get we still cannot get how much the little things like this. We still can't get the statistics on that. Sterling Griff is really into about how much they're spending on food, how much they spending on, what sort of staff. Why isn't there staff ratios? Considering we have staff ratios in childcare centres, there is a lot of work to be done here. But to sit here and actually talk the talk and not walk the walk, especially with the most vulnerable people in our society, and not actually get those implementations, not put those recommendations in and implement them, I'll tell you what, I think it's just going to show what we've all been thinking about. Morrison's got a perfect time. He's got a perfect chance now, opportunity to stand up and say that he can show that he can actually walk the walk and not talk the talk. But I tell you, I'm not... I certainly won't be holding my breath over the situation, which is really unfortunate. But for goodness sake, if there's one thing that annoys me in Parliament, it's doing those inquiries and then doing exactly what they said about all those aged care ones. They go on a shelf and they collect dust and nobody does anything about them. It is dreadful and it's shocking what's going on in those aged care homes. Even the practice of some of those aged care homes, unless you start doing something, I'm not sure it's going to leave it. You see the banks starting to misbehave themselves after the Royal Commission, So how long is it going to do it before aged care is going back to normality and misbehaving if they're not already? So, the only way you can do is get those recommendations in as quickly as possible and really put your foot down on them.
Yeah, and we were just I did a podcast with our senior economist, Matt Grudnoff, yesterday, and we were talking about the kind of economic aspect of it. And what you've said there really hits the nail on the head. They're poorly paid, but it's an incredibly labour-intensive industry. It needs more funding. It needs a bigger workforce. It needs a better qualified and a better paid workforce. If you can do all of that, that would be an absolute jobs bonanza for the country. So not only would we be giving dignity to all Australians living in aged care, but you'd actually be doing a hell of a lot to grow the economy, to reduce the unemployment rate, and to help lift wages for everyone. If such a big sector is having wages growth, that would help everybody else as well.
Yeah, and if you've got a sector where training is a deficiency, then let them do their degrees or let them go through TAFE, and we as taxpayers pay for it. You've only got to do it for 4 to 6 years, so you can get a numerous amount of people there. And even if you say, right, well, we've done this and paid for you, you're going to do return of service. These things are never discussed on the table. That's just common sense to me. Well, we've paid for that, but you have to stay in that sector for at least 5 years.
Yeah.
Or something.
You were just talking about the banks, Jacqui. So Alicia Gawthorne has asked, first of all, says thank you for making the time today, and that she has real concerns about the Treasurer's proposal to repeal the responsible lending laws, which is currently being reviewed by a Senate committee. Do you have any thoughts on that bill and the removal of individuals' rights to take action against banks?
Yes, I do have a problem with it. Yeah, I'm going to wait. Look, I always do the right thing. I let the inquiry do its job. And if I've got the time, I'll try and at least get half a day in one of those inquiries just so I can actually hear it. But I do have an issue with that. It'll be very interesting to see what the inquiry comes out with. And I'll wait until then and have a good look at it, and we'll just see what's floating around and whether anyone's done any deals with them already or whatever. But, I just, if people want to go and sue, they should have the right to do so. I watched this as B Squad, and there was a law firm out there which I found very disappointing that said, no, you'll take this or nothing, and you're not getting an option to sue for any more money. And they're supposed to be out there for the most vulnerable. I won't mention their name in case they sue me, but I was really disappointed in the B Squad in the way that was for some of our most, if not the most vulnerable people in our society that had some of the most physical and psychological issues that you can possibly imagine. That, when they were giving them 50 cents an hour or whatever else, and that they made a deal that they could get 60% of their wages back. The law firm made a crap load of money out of it, and they were not allowed to sue for any further loss of earnings, so don't forget things like that. That made me feel sick to the gut. So I'll be watching this one very carefully.
And just to wrap us up, Jacqui, I know you've done a lot of work around veterans issues. Is there anything on that front that you want to leave us with before we wrap up? We've only got 5 minutes.
Not really. I think, I've been out there banging the drum now for 8 years. It's sort of, it's certainly the Tasmanian people, when I first went out there, they said, what are you standing on? Because I had no idea what I was doing. I said, well, I'm telling you, the veterans aren't being treated any better than what they were since they've been our veterans. And they went, oh, no, that's not true. And you spend 5 minutes with them and they'd go, oh, my God, they've learnt nothing from our Vietnam veterans, have they? I go, nope. No, so and I think by doing that, you can see the wheels really turning now for that Royal Commission. But for me, there's only one way that this is going to be fixed, and that is by actually having a Royal Commission. With the amount of suicides that are going on, so this is another problem with the Prime Minister. He just won't admit when he's got it wrong and just say, no, I've got this wrong, and we need a Royal Commission. But for us, just getting a commissioner into veteran suicide is like another slap in the face. It just took us down another peg. That's how we feel as former serving members, because it's not just about what's happening under Veterans Affairs and suicides. The suicides are nearly matching those that are coming off base of those who are serving. The young kids, what the hell is going on? We're not screening them properly to see if they're strong enough. Is there abuse going on? So this thing goes much bigger, and also go into the leadership and the culture of ADFA, RMC. This thing will grow like an octopus. This commissioner does not have the power to do that. And with the Royal Commissioner, he can just change his terms of references going on. If he says, actually, that's got to be looked at because that's connected to this, I need somebody that knows what they're doing, and they do not. And it's not, once again, it's not independent. And this is what bothers me. When they say it's independent up there, especially over these allegations of rape and that sort of thing, and they're starting to make their own little independent, but they're not bloody independent. I've learned that all the way along here. And, when you've got someone like Bernadette Boss that's been given her the Commissioner's job because she's damn good friends with the Defence Commissioner and with the Secretary of DVA, and you want me to trust you in making that decision? I don't think so. So for us, there is only one way. We're having a big rally on the day before. We're really going to smack it out this year. So we're having a big rally on the day before Anzac Day, and we're just trying to get clearance through one of the states to be able to do that because of COVID. So there'll be more on this getting out there in the next few weeks, but we're not mucking around. We want boots on ground on that 24th of April, and we're going to go out there and give it our best shot and just really push the issue.
Excellent. Well, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for your time, Jacqui Lambie, and thanks, Eloise, for joining us as well. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for all your wonderful questions. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to all of them. Thanks, Jacqui.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This has been a special webinar episode of Follow the Money. All of our webinars are free and available to view on our YouTube channel, which you can find and subscribe to at australiainstitute.tv. All our latest research and content is at australiainstitute.org.au, and you can find us on Twitter at the Oz Institute with an AUS. My Twitter handle is ebony_Bennett with a _N_T, and you can find our producer Jennifer Macy at Jennifer Macy. Our theme music is by Jonathan McFeet from Pulse and Thrum. Stay safe out there, everyone, and thanks for listening.